Hey everybody, it's Peter Dills.
And I'm Mike Bingley.
And this is going to be a great show. It's another edition of Straight Off the Menu. We're live each and every Monday afternoon at 3 p.m. from Rocco's Tavern right here in Old Pasadena.
And it is Old Pasadena. It's where they have a great happy hour. And what do we got? Oh, you got a beer, but you had
I switched.
You had a great margarita in front of you just a few minutes ago.
You know, there's always some type of day going on. If it's National Cake Day, National Beer Day, National Groundhog Day, just happens to be on this particular day that we're filming, because you know we film live and then we edit it and replay the show Saturdays and Sunday at 3 p.m. on Charter Channel 188. It's National Friggin' Margarita Day.
Yes, it is. And you know, we have the voice of God with us today too. The most effervescent Dean Lee, who is going to let us know if somebody's chiming in from the internet, and he's going to be letting us know.
Can't we just call him Johnny?
Call him God.
Call him God, Johnny God.
Yeah, this is the voice of God here.
This is the voice of God.
Voice of the internet.
So if you're on Twitter or Periscope or watching us on Facebook right now, and if you have a question, we'll answer the question.
That's it. That's it.
I will say whatever it is, and so I'm the go-between the internet and you guys.
It won't fall upon deaf ears.
We are going to be so organized, but first, let's start off with a couple restaurant reviews. That's why we're here. What you got for us?
Oh, what do I have for
Mr.
you?
Mike Bingley?
You ever Hatter Baba? Have you heard of that?
Is that an aftershave lotion?
No. And I might be pronouncing it wrong.
It sounds like a tough one. That's why I always go with the easy ones,
Hatter
like
Baba.
In-N-Out Burger.
It's a Middle Eastern Persian restaurant.
Okay.
And man, it's good. It's good. If you like that type of food, it's a lot of bang for your buck. Food is just great. They got a dish called a kubade dish, which is basically these skewers of chicken or beef or pork, and it's ground up and has onions and all kinds of different seasonings on a big bed of basmati rice. And oh my goodness, Peter, it is really a good place. They got a lamb shank that will knock your socks off if you're in a lamb.
I like it.
And you can even get a cheeseburger there if you want a
Cheeseburger?
cheeseburger. Yeah, I know.
Why are we thinking about Paul Little now when we're talking about cheeseburgers?
I said that magic word, didn't I?
Cheeseburger.
Yeah, but we'll let that go for a bit.
Yeah.
Hey, but the thing is, it's across from PCC.
Yeah.
Okay, it's on Colorado Boulevard. It's 1511 East Colorado Boulevard, and I think it's worth trying. I think you would really like it if you haven't been. And they prepare all their meat to the religious standard. It's called hatay. Halal.
You got a lot of tough words today.
Yeah, halal, and it's a very strict way of how they slaughter the animals and what have you. And and they're very proud of the way they do that.
Okay.
So it's quality stuff.
Did you dine there or did you take it out?
No, I dined there. I've dined a few times, so I know the real deal. You can't get beer or wine there or anything like that. It's a non-alcoholic place, but and they have parking in the back, which is and that area is kind of a lot of places don't have parking, but they have a pretty good-sized parking lot. So, yeah. Anyways, again, it's it's at 1511 East Colorado Boulevard, and all that's Hatter Baba. And it's a place I think that you should try. You gonna tell me you haven't tried that?
I've been there.
You have? Okay. You're just now coming out with that.
Well,
now, huh?
I got to-go food.
To-go food.
Yeah, and what I thought was kind of neat is that I said, all right, to go, and then the woman says, well, let me follow you to your car, and I said, well, no, I'll just give me the food. She goes, oh, no, we always carry out the food on to-go orders, which I thought was a class act. I like the food. It's one of those places, I don't know if I would go there monthly, because I already have my favorite on that exact street, but I liked it. I agree. I'm with you on this one.
Well, it's a little different than the place that you're talking about. It's it's kind of like apples and oranges.
Okay.
And what you're referring to is the Sahara.
Sahara.
And their food is quite different, but it is Mediterranean.
Okay.
And they do have beer and wine there. So,
right.
So, but anyway, what do you got to talk about today? I know you have some fine restaurant you want to talk about.
I'm going to do an about face here.
About face.
Yeah, I've gone to the Habit. It's a hamburger place. They started in the late '60s in Santa Barbara. The Habit Grill. It's a hamburger place in Pasadena.
That's the place that we tore up on a previous show, right?
I tore it up.
Yeah.
I thought it was very average, like in the Carl's Jr. range. And I went there on Friday, and I had the original Santa Barbara hamburger there, and I had it on a sourdough bread and grilled onions, almost like a.
What is a Santa Barbara hamburger? What is the original?
I'm explaining it. It comes on a piece of sourdough. It's almost like a patty melt, but instead of rye bread, they use sourdough bread.
Oh, okay. All right.
So I got the bread, not toasted, and I got to tell you, Mike, I liked it.
Yeah.
So as we talked about before, I kind of I thought there were better places like the Hook or Rounds or Big Daddy's. I thought are better, but on this go around, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. No beer, no wine, great service, good service.
How do you mean service?
I mean, you go up
you
there.
walk up, give your order, and sit down, right? And
They're friendly. They
and
make
you go pick up your order. What
you
service
do,
is
but
there?
if you order a milkshake, they're going to bring it to you. They're friendly people in there, and they're just. I just got that feeling that that they weren't so uppity or not appreciative to have a job.
Do you know what the hell you're talking about?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to check.
Yeah.
Here.
So, Mike, you gave your review. I gave my review. I got a question for you. We're going to go to break.
Please ask.
I'm going to ask. These places like I can't say the name of the restaurant you just reviewed again.
Hadar Baba.
Harababa. And the place I'm talking about is the Habit. Pasadena, where we live, and other cities that you're watching, Long Beach, Malibu, we're on Charter Cable 188. There's a lot of these issues that are coming upon city council and government, local government, a wave of things to increase
Minimum wage?
minimum wage, so that $5.95 burger or that $5 beer or that $28 steak, I'm wondering if it's in jeopardy. For me, minimum wage it's minimum wage. We are going to pay you $10. Now, if I'm working at a restaurant for 6 months or a year, I'm figuring that I'm going to get a raise. I'm going to get $11 or $12. After 5 years, I should be making $18, $20, $25.
Yeah.
So there's, in Pasadena, minimum wage is, I think it's $10.50. Is it $10.50?
$10.25.
$10.25.
$10.25. I think that.
And they're talking about in Pasadena, the city council, I guess city council gets to tell restaurant owners and other people, not just restaurants, but on how much to pay them. So my point, and I want to learn more about it, and we will after the break, but my point is, we're not trying to get people a living wage, it's a minimum wage. So a minimum wage, what do you think? You were telling me during the break that it's something that if you're working at McDonald's, you shouldn't expect to be able to buy a house.
Yeah, you shouldn't be able to. It's just that, a minimum wage. But you know what? We have somebody that's coming on that's going to kind of get to the meat and potatoes of all this, if I'm not mistaken. Who do we have coming on?
Paul Little. He's the president of the Pasadena Chamber of Commerce. And obviously he is representing business, and that's fine. But he's going to also give us the bare bones, the ABCs on what exactly minimum wage is today and what it might be in a few years from now.
And he's been around the block a few times. He was a councilman.
And he was on the other side. He was a councilman.
Yeah, I remember him. Yeah. I used to always get pissed off at him when he was a councilman because he'd never talk into the microphone, but we'll talk about that later.
I love those city council meetings with the, what was the guy's name like 20 years ago? Moved up to San Francisco with his wife. Isaac Richard. Did you know those things on Channel 3? Isaac Richard was worth the price of admission watching those city council meetings. But we're not here to talk about that. We're going to talk to minimum wage with Paul Little when we come back from this break. It's Peter Dills.
And I'm Mike Bingley.
And we call the show Straight Off the Menu. Hey, we're back. It's Peter Dills.
Yes, and I'm Mike Bingley, and we have Paul Little with us today.
Paul Little is the president of the Pasadena Chamber of Commerce. Paul, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I appreciate being here.
It's National Margarita Day, so I'm drinking beer and Mike's drinking a margarita.
And I got a couple hours more work to do, and then I'll have one after that.
Well, somebody's got to take this economy in Pasadena serious.
Exactly, yeah.
got to put food on the table.
You do got to put food on the table. Now, I want to ask you about minimum wage. What is it? What's happening? Don't give us your opinion just yet. Tell us what minimum wage is and why. When and why was minimum wage established? I didn't ask you that, did I, before?
You're
Okay,
going,
that's it.
Going way back.
When was minimum wage established, and why was minimum wage established?
As I understand it, and I did a bunch of research on this stuff, minimum wage was established in the 1930s as a way to guarantee that people would make, at an entry level, would have a set wage. It wasn't intended at that time to be money for a head of household, for example, to put food on the table, but it was a way so that because of, back in the since the beginning of time up until that point, essentially you would come in and say, I want a job, and I'd say, okay, well, here, go dig holes for 25 cents an hour. And somebody else somewhere else would be making 50 cents an hour, for example, something like that. And there wasn't any consistency, and there was were a lot of instances of people who were being flat out exploited in the workplace because, especially at that time, there were a lot more opportunities than there were jobs. And so it was sort of, along with the start of things like Social Security and all that, kind of the beginning of that safety net culture. In the 30s, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, the first minimum wage was something like 50 cents an hour. But that was a while ago.
Yeah.
What's the difference between a living wage and minimum wage?
Well, a minimum wage is what's statutory set as the bare lowest you can be paid for any job. And it varies in different states because they have different approaches. A living wage is what you would calculate to be the amount of money that, say, your household would require to actually pay the rent, put food on the table, pay the utilities and all that. So living wage tends to be considerably higher than a minimum wage.
Do you see a possibility of a restaurant like the Habit or Pie and Burger that charges $7 or $8 for a burger? Do you see any possibilities of, number one, restaurants? I'm just talking about restaurants because it's a restaurant show. Mm-hmm. Restaurants going out of business or having to increase the price of their goods.
Well, let me, when we talked about 50 cents, the minimum wage right now in California is $10 an hour. It just went to $10 an hour January 1. California also is one of 6 or 7 states that does not have what's called a tip credit. Tip credit is, for example, my son worked in the restaurant business in New York. His base wage was $5 an hour, even though the minimum wage in New York, I think, was $9 or $9.50. But because he made tips, he actually made considerably more money than that.
Sounds fair to me.
In California, it's not legal.
Why?
I asked the legislature. When they did minimum wage back in the 70s, there were provisions for tip credits, but now they're not allowed. They weren't allowed. And there are different kinds of provisions. There's a law in California that says tips belong to the employee that they're given to.
Yes.
Which is perfectly fine. When minimum wage right now in California is $10 an hour, Pasadena just passed an ordinance. They're about to enact an ordinance where it's going to go to $10.50 an hour on July 1 of this year, and then it'll go to $12.25, I think $12.25, and then $13.50 by 2018. The challenge with that for a lot of places is that they can't raise prices enough to make up the difference. Mm-hmm. The rule of thumb in economics, sort of across the board, is that for every 10% you raise the minimum wage, an establishment has to raise its prices 5%, mm-hmm. Unless it's a really labor-intensive industry like restaurants. You were talking about the $5 burger. So if the $5 burger goes up 5%, it's going to go up 25 cents.
Okay.
But if the $5 burger has to go up 20%, it's going to go up $1. Mm-hmm. But it's a very labor-intensive business, so the chances are it's going to go up more than that.
Okay.
And in other places, you'll see the same thing happening, and it can have a significant impact, ironically, on the people that you expect minimum wage to help.
Right.
Because what happens is, restaurants operate on around a 3.5% margin on average in California, which means for every $100,000 a restaurant makes, $3,500 is profit. That's pretty slim.
Yes.
If you boost the labor costs, which is about a third of the cost of a restaurant, if you boost that a third of that $100,000 by 10%, that's that profit margin. So where's that come from? Well, it can't come from the product cost, which are going to go up. And it
Well,
can't
because
come
the product
from
cost is going to go up because the people, the Rykoffs or Cisco or US Foods,
They have to pay more.
They have to pay more.
Right.
Absolutely.
They can't recoup it by raising the price of the product by 15 or 20%. So it's going to come out of the employees. There are going to be fewer employees working fewer hours, and more. And the other thing that happens, which is kind of logical, Pasadena's minimum wage is higher, for example, than Arcadia, than South Pass, than
Right.
Alhambra. So somebody who maybe used to be able to walk into a restaurant and apply for a dishwasher job with absolutely no experience is now going to be competing with somebody who's been working in Arcadia and has experience, but is going to want to come over here because they get another $1 a quarter now.
Right.
So there'll be fewer opportunities actually for unskilled people in Pasadena. The other irony in all of it is that the restaurant business is one of the few businesses that remains where you can walk in the door as an 18-year-old with absolutely no skills and 20 years later own the restaurant, because it's a business you learn as you go. You can go to college and you can learn about running a restaurant, but people who are successful at running restaurants are successful because they have experience running restaurants. And I know people. You know Robin. Robin started out washing dishes in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
That's what he says.
Yeah, that's what he says. And an IHOP. And now owns a restaurant and catering business.
Right.
One of my concerns is having a level playing field. For instance, as you're saying, Arcadia has different rules than Pasadena. It's just somebody wants to go to work at Pasadena or Arcadia. It seems like things should be, in a perfect world, things should be level. You know what I'm saying? It all should be on the same deal.
Right. Well, imagine a scenario where you're, let's see, let me think of a good example here. Your Ruth's Chris Steakhouse.
Mm-hmm.
Ruth's Chris Steakhouse in Pasadena has to pay its people more money. So it may have to charge more for the same thing that the Ruth's Chris in Burbank or Glendale or Alhambra or wherever they might be charges. So at some point, does it make more sense, since the product is, it's excellent, but it's relatively the same from one to the other? Does it make sense to drive 10 minutes and save yourself $5?
Well,
Maybe.
you're the president of the Pasadena Chamber of Commerce, and your whole thing is pro-business and wanting these businesses to be a part of the chamber. I mean, you want as many members as you can, and you're out there representing them. But do you think it ever could come to a point where somebody like a Ruth Chris or a Fleming's, maybe not now, 2016, but maybe in 5 years, they might say, you know what? We considered Pasadena and Burbank. We're going to go to Burbank. It's a little easier it's a little less cost for us to run a restaurant.
Mm-hmm. It's happened already. Gordon Biersch, that used to be here in One Colorado, they still have one in Burbank.
Yeah.
But they're not expanding at all in California. They're expanding in Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, where costs are much lower and the profit margin is much higher. So you see it already in some cases. I think you're right about the level playing field. This wouldn't be so onerous on local folks here in Pasadena if everybody were having to do it. Mm-hmm. So that price increases were across the board in the region or in the essentially in the state, really.
I think this also goes on the tips. Yes, Dean Lee.
This is the voice of the internet. So you have a question you want from Facebook asking, I'm going to paraphrase this, and I guess what they're really asking is, should the customers pick up the difference when you're talking about the living wage and the minimum wage, the difference between those? Why is that put off on the customer and not the restaurants to pick up what should be a living wage? That's a question from Facebook.
I'm not sure
meaning that why are they're saying I think they're saying the owner should pick up the slack, but they're not going to pick up the slack. They're going to
when all things being equal, the cost has to be picked up somewhere, and,
Yeah.
and it's going to be picked up in the product
Yeah.
that they're selling.
Yeah, if Greg Smith from Parkway Grill is netting $100,000 a year, he's not going to say, "Hey, I'm going to be a nice guy and lose 20,000." No, he's just not going to do that.
Well, and the other sort of reality of all this is that minimum wage isn't intended to be that living wage. It's not. It's
Exactly.
intended.
Yeah.
It was always intended to be the foot in the door.
Or help out with college.
Right. Well, my
whatever.
my first job, I think I made $1.35 an hour when I was 14. That was the minimum wage at that point. Back when actually, my third job when I was in high school, I pumped gas, which you don't even do anymore. But I was a high school kid making $1.65 an hour for about 20 hours a week. It was decent money, and I could go out and I could do what I wanted and I could buy what I wanted, and
You made
that
big
kind of
bucks.
stuff.
Big bucks, huh?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
made $250. That was my first minimum
I know,
wage.
but it's like the reality was at that time, and in our situation, if I wanted something beyond food and a bed, I had to pay for it.
Right.
But it wasn't the rent. It wasn't food on the table. It wasn't the electric bill. It wasn't that stuff. It was if I wanted to buy shoes or something special or record albums, like a ton of record albums, that kind of stuff, I could.
Yeah.
And that's a minimum wage is really intended to be that kind of a thing where it's the basics that you get for the basic work and a way for an entry-level person to be paid, an amount, but not an amount that's going to, pay the mortgage. It's the starting job. It's the first job. It's the one that you get to get your feet off the ground and get some experience. The irony in all of it is the people who are really going to get hurt the most. Youth employment suffers. There are graphs that track the national minimum wage and youth unemployment, and they track exactly. It's frightening.
What I was telling Mike is, if it was me, let's say I worked at a downtown hotel, and my job was I was the maintenance, or I made the beds, and when people. If it was me, I'd walk into a hotel or a restaurant and say, "Look, you're paying everybody else $13 an hour. Pay me $18 an hour." Well, why would we have to pay you $18 an hour and pay anybody else $13? No. I'm going to do the work of two people. You're going to pay me $18 an hour, and you're not going to have anybody else because I'm going to do everybody's work. I mean, that's when I grew up. Believe it or not, my dad always used to say, "Work hard and you'll get ahead." Now we're getting to a point, and no one's paying me to say this, Mike, but work hard and get ahead. And now it's like, oh well, hey, we're going to pay you $15 an hour, no matter what you do. No, that doesn't seem. I think that's my biggest issue. Is no, I don't get rid of minimum wage entirely because I'm going to pay you for what you're worth.
Well, and the other thing that happens is
vote for me. Vote for me. Vote for me.
I didn't know you were running, Trump.
Yeah.
I'm not running.
Yeah.
I'm going to take Victor. I'm taking Victor Gordo. I'm going after your seat, buddy.
Yeah,
I don't like the way you run my district.
Somebody may, you never know. But the other thing that happens, there are two things that happen. I did a lot of research in this because I wanted to know what I was talking about.
Yes.
Two things that happen consistently with the minimum wage. When you raise the minimum wage, the folks that used to have those jobs, the employers now look for somebody who's got more skills and more experience. So not necessarily you walk in the door and say, "I want $18 an hour," but the employer says is, "You have no experience. I'm not paying you $15 an hour. I'm going to pay the guy who's got experience $15 an hour for the same reason, because they get more productivity out of them. But the guy who could have got their foot in the door and started at a lower wage doesn't get that job." The other thing that happens is the people who actually really miss out are the people who've just left that level. Because what happens is, at a place like a restaurant, it's very labor intensive.
Yeah.
But you have to have people out here on the floor serving people.
Yeah.
If that's your model, and if you don't have enough of those, then your business suffers. But what ends up being lost is the next step up. That first level manager position doesn't exist anymore, because that's the person who ends up being more disposable.
In Europe, McDonald's and the chains are actually trying to have these automated, like Del Taco, McDonald's. You go in there, you hit a couple buttons, and in a McDonald's, the hamburger comes out the chute. You get yourself a cup, get your own drink, pay for it however you want. I could see that happening here in California in 5 or 6 years, where automation catches up, technology catches up, where, you know what, we don't need 25 employees. We can get by with 5 because, you know, we're going to serve you a great burger, but you're just going to get it yourself.
There's a restaurant in San Francisco that just opened up that when I was a kid, we used to go to New York and they had these automats. And you would put your money in a slot. If you wanted a sandwich, you'd put your money in a slot,
Yeah.
and there was a sandwich in there, and you would take your sandwich out. There's a restaurant in San Francisco that does that on a made-to-order basis, where you go in, you order what you want, you pay for it with your card, and then you get a thing that says your number 73, and when number 73 lights up, your food is there. You go over and take it out of the slot, get it, close it up.
You are watching Straight Off the Menu. It's Mike Bingley over there and Peter Dills, and this is our guest today. He's Paul Little. He is the president of the Pasadena Chamber of Commerce. And we've learned a lot about minimum wage. I want to talk to you a little bit about cheeseburgers.
Oh no, not cheeseburgers.
Cheeseburgers.
We just got done with cheeseburger.
Did you make that up? Were they really invented in Pasadena?
Absolutely.
How do you know that?
Well, honestly, the whole cheeseburger thing started as a bit of a lark to be part of California Restaurant Month, and Wikipedia said cheeseburger was invented here.
Was a spot? It was called the Spot?
The Right Spot.
Right Spot,
1500 West Colorado. It's over near where Stony Point is now.
Yeah.
And so I sort of went with that. And then the LA Times called me up and said, how do you know? And so
Okay.
I had to actually do research. And the LA Times had actually tracked it down back in the 80s and said the cheeseburger was in fact invented or first served to a customer at the Right Spot in Pasadena. And then Hamburger America has it. And in fact, Lionel Sternberger, who's credited with inventing it, in his obituary in Time magazine in the early 1960s, said the same thing, that this guy invented the cheeseburger.
Paul, at one point we want to have sponsors of this show, but we don't, so we don't really mind who we offend. But I know that these are members of the Pasadena Chamber of Commerce. Who is the best cheeseburger in Pasadena? Don't tell me according to your poll.
Yeah.
Where do you and your wife like to go, Paul?
real deal.
Well, it depends. When we do our thing, we don't say best, we say favorite.
Okay.
Because it's very difficult, and especially on something like cheeseburgers. I like Pie and Burger cheeseburgers. I like.
Ooh, the New York Times slammed them.
Did they?
You were telling me, right?
Yep, that's what I heard.
They said,
yeah.
why are New York Times did a whole thing on Pasadena.
Thumbs
and
up to the Rancho and
they
bad
said
for
we
the
don't
fine burger."
understand.
I know.
I don't know.
We don't understand why Pasadena.
I said they did that 36 hours thing in Pasadena.
Yes, yeah.
But my wife and I on Saturday, after I got my haircut from Michael down in San Marino, went to the counter.
Yeah.
They have a nice burger. I had a muffaletta burger, which is something I'd never had before. But they do a good one. It depends on what you're looking for.
Okay.
You know, you can get Green Street has great burgers. Slater's, if you like that bacon.
I had one Saturday night. It was good.
Yeah, but the bacon, half beef ones at
Doghouse.
Slater's.
Doghouse has
really
Mike
good ones.
likes the Doghouse.
Doghouse has good ones. You know, I think I make a pretty good cheeseburger.
I agree. I make one
you
good
know?
at home.
So you can find a good cheeseburger anywhere in Pasadena that serves one. Let me say that.
For more information on the chamber, go to PasadenaChamber.org.
Pasadena-chamber.org.
All
and
right.
for food stuff, PasadenaRestaurantWeek.com.
We'll ride on. Paul Little with the Chamber of Commerce.
He's giving us the real deal here on the cheeseburgers, you know, as much as he'll break loose with anyway.
Yeah. Well, I'm Peter Dills.
Let me put it this way: I've yet to find a bad cheeseburger anywhere.
I was just
boy,
kidding
I
you
can-
about
I
that
can-
microphone thing.
I can find you one.
yeah.
That's why I made sure you had one right here. And
That's
that one
okay.
over here.
So, guys, thanks for watching the show. I'm Peter Dills.
And I'm Mike Bingley.
And thanks for watching Straight Off the Menu.
Thanks. That was fun.